The cryopod hissed open with a sound like escaping steam. Carol Bennett's eyes snapped open, her lungs dragging in air that tasted stale and metallic. Red emergency lights pulsed across the ceiling above her, painting everything in shades of blood and shadow. Something was very wrong. She sat up slowly, expecting the usual cryo-sickness. The dizziness, the nausea, the feeling that her bones had turned to jelly. But none of it came. Instead she felt sharp, alert. Her muscles responded instantly, smoothly, like a machine that had been perfectly maintained. "Status report," Carol said, her voice rough from 2 centuries of silence. The ship's AI responded immediately. "Welcome back, Chief Engineer Bennett. Current status critical. Hull breach in sections 4 through 9. Weapon systems offline. Navigation compromised. Life support at 40% capacity." Carol swung her legs over the edge of the pod. The floor was cold against her bare feet, but she barely noticed. Other crew members? There was a pause. A long one. Too long. "Cryopod failures detected. You are the sole survivor of the crew complement." The words hit her like a physical blow. 47 people. Her friends. The scientists, the pilots, the farmers who were supposed to build a new world. All gone while they slept. "How?" she whispered. "Meteor strike 17 years ago. Shields failed to deflect debris. Damage was catastrophic. Your pod was in the most protected section of the ship." Carol stood, and that was when she noticed it. She had moved too fast. One moment sitting, the next standing with no effort at all. She looked down at her hands, turning them over in the red light. They looked the same, but they felt different. Stronger. "AI, run a medical scan on me." "Scanning now." Lights flickered across her body. "Results are unusual, Chief Bennett. Your muscle density has increased by 47%. Bone structure has been reinforced. Neural pathways show enhanced connectivity. Your body appears to have adapted during extended cryo-sleep rather than deteriorating." Carol pressed her palm against the metal wall. She pushed, gently at first, then harder. The metal groaned and bent inward under her hand. She jerked back, staring at the handprint she had left in solid steel. "What happened to me?" "Unknown. This adaptation has never been documented in cryo-sleep studies. You are a medical anomaly." Before Carol could respond, alarms blared through the ship. The AI's voice took on an urgent tone. "Warning. Unauthorized vessels approaching. 3 ships, unknown configuration. They are hailing us. Put them through." The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke, harsh and clicking, words that the translation software struggled to interpret. "Human vessel. You have entered claimed territory of the Threenix Collective. Your presence is illegal. Surrender your ship immediately or face destruction." Carol's mind raced. No weapons. No crew. A dying ship. And now aliens who wanted to take even that away from her. "This is Chief Engineer Carol Bennett of the Earth colony ship Perseverance. We have claim to this system under interstellar expedition law. Our journey began 200 years ago." The alien voice laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Your laws mean nothing here. We claimed this world 60 of your years ago. You slept while we built. You slept while we conquered. Now you wake to find nothing belongs to you." "Give me options, AI," Carol muttered, cutting the channel. "Limited. The ship cannot achieve escape velocity. Weapons are completely destroyed. Life support will fail in approximately 48 hours. Recommendation: surrender and hope for mercy." Carol looked around the cryo chamber. Empty pods lined the walls, each one a coffin for someone she had known. Someone she had laughed with, planned with, dreamed with about the new world they would build together. She had not come 200 years across the stars to surrender. How long until they board us? Estimated 12 minutes until docking procedures complete. Carol moved through the ship with purpose. Her enhanced body made everything easier. She climbed ladders without effort, squeezed through damaged corridors that should have been impossible to navigate, and lifted debris that would have crushed her before. Whatever the cryo-sleep had done to her, it had made her more than she had been. She reached the armory. Or what was left of it. The meteor strike had torn through this section worst of all. Weapons were scattered and broken, most of them fused into useless scrap by the heat of impact. She picked up a plasma rifle, but its power cell was dead. The projectile weapons were out of ammunition. "AI, give me the ship layout. Where will they board?" "Airlock 3 is the only functional docking port remaining." Carol ran there, her feet barely seeming to touch the ground. She was faster now. Much faster. She positioned herself in the shadows near the airlock and waited. The ship shuddered as the alien vessel connected. Carol's heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 3 figures stepped through. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, covered in segmented armor that gleamed even in the emergency lighting. Their heads were narrow and elongated, with multiple eyes that glowed with a faint blue light. Each carried a weapon that hummed with energy. "Scan shows 1 life sign," one of them said in that clicking, translated voice. "Termination authorized if resistance is encountered." Carol stayed perfectly still. They moved past her position, their attention focused on the ship's interior. She studied them, looking for weaknesses. The armor had joints at the knees and elbows. The weapons were connected to their suits by power cables. One of them paused, its head turning slightly in her direction. Carol held her breath. Movement detected. Section B7. They moved toward her hiding spot. Carol waited until the first one was close enough, then she moved. Her enhanced speed caught them completely off guard. She grabbed the alien's weapon, yanked it free from the power cable with strength that surprised even her, and used it as a club to strike the second alien across its helmet. The third alien raised its weapon, but Carol was already diving behind a support beam. Energy fire scorched the air where she had been standing. "Target is enhanced," the alien shouted. "Repeat, human shows abnormal capabilities." Carol's mind worked rapidly. 3 trained soldiers with advanced technology against 1 engineer with no weapons and a body she did not fully understand yet. But she knew this ship. Every corridor, every system, every weakness. And for the first time since waking, Carol Bennett smiled. They had the weapons, the armor, and the numbers. But she had become something they had never encountered before. She had become stronger than any weapon they carried. The real fight was just beginning. Carol moved through the damaged corridors like a shadow. Behind her, she could hear the heavy footsteps of the Threenix soldiers searching for her. Their communication devices crackled with frustrated clicks and harsh commands. "Target lost in Section C4. Spreading search pattern." She pressed herself against a wall, controlling her breathing. Her enhanced hearing picked up every sound. 3 soldiers behind her. 2 more ahead. They were trying to box her in. Carol looked up at the ceiling panels. The maintenance crawlways ran throughout the ship, too small for the 7-foot aliens but perfect for her. She jumped. Her new strength launched her upward with barely any effort. She caught the edge of an open panel and pulled herself up silently. Below, 2 Threenix soldiers walked past, their glowing eyes scanning the corridor. "This makes no sense," one of them said. "Humans are weak, fragile. How is one moving this fast?" "Commander Kelris wants her alive now. He wants to study what makes her different." Carol crawled through the narrow space, her body moving with an ease that still surprised her. 200 years ago, she would have struggled through here, her shoulders scraping the sides. Now she glided through like water. She dropped down into the engineering section, landing without a sound. This was her territory. She had designed half these systems herself before they left Earth. The Threenix might have superior weapons, but they did not know this ship. Carol moved to a control panel and typed rapidly. The lights in Section D flickered and died. She heard confused shouts from the aliens. Then she activated the gravity controls, reducing it to nearly 0 in that section. More shouts, now tinged with alarm as the soldiers began floating helplessly. "She is using the ship against us," one of them yelled into their communicator. Carol was already moving to her next position. She found an emergency supply locker and pulled out a magnetic grappling cable. Not a weapon exactly, but tools could be weapons if you were creative enough. 3 Threenix soldiers entered the engineering bay, moving carefully now. They had learned she was dangerous. Carol waited until they were spread out, then she threw a piece of metal debris across the room. All 3 spun toward the sound, weapons raised. She dropped from above, the grappling cable in her hands. She wrapped it around the first soldier's weapon and yanked hard. The weapon flew from its grip and skittered across the floor. Before the others could react, Carol was already moving. She slid between the second soldier's legs, too fast for it to track, and slammed her elbow into the back of its knee joint. The armor cracked. The alien stumbled. The third soldier fired, but Carol was no longer there. The energy blast hit a coolant pipe, and steam exploded into the room. Carol used the cover to retreat back into the ventilation system. "Status report," a new voice commanded through the communicators. This one sounded different, deeper, more authoritative. "Commander Kelris, the human female is evading all contact. She moves faster than our scanners can track. She knows this vessel completely. We cannot predict her movements." There was a long pause. Carol listened carefully from her hiding spot. Interesting, Commander Kelris said. Very interesting. All units cease lethal force authorization. I want to speak with this human. She has earned that much. Carol frowned. A trap? Probably. But she was running out of options. The ship would die soon and she would die with it. Maybe talking would buy her time to think of a real plan. She made her way to the cargo bay, the largest open space on the ship. If they wanted to talk, she would choose the location. She dropped down from a high catwalk and stood in the center of the empty room, arms at her sides. I am here, she called out. Let us talk. The main cargo door opened. 6 Threenix soldiers entered first, weapons ready but pointed at the floor. Then Commander Kelris walked in, and Carol understood immediately that he was different from the others. He was taller, his armor more ornate. His multiple eyes glowed a deeper blue, and when he moved, there was confidence in every step. He studied her the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. You are Carol Bennett, he said. His translated voice was smoother than the soldiers. Chief engineer of this vessel. The only survivor. And you are Commander Kelris. The one trying to steal my destination. Kelris made a sound that might have been laughter. Steal? We have been here for 60 years. Your claim expired through your absence. We were traveling. You cannot claim abandonment when we were always coming. An interesting legal argument. But irrelevant. Kelris moved closer, circling her slowly. What interests me more is you. My soldiers report impossible things. Strength beyond human normal. Speed that defeats our tracking systems. How did you become this? Carol kept turning to face him. The Cryo-Sleep. 200 years in suspension changed me somehow. My body adapted. Fascinating. Kelris stopped circling. In all our encounters with other species, we have never seen successful adaptation from Cryo-Sleep. Most die. Those who survive are weakened, not strengthened. You are unique. Does that mean you will let me live? That depends. You have demonstrated combat capability despite having no weapons. You use the ship as a weapon instead. You think strategically. You adapt quickly. These are traits the Threenix value. He paused. I propose an alternative to your execution. Carol's muscles tensed. What alternative? Threenix law is ancient. It states that territorial disputes can be settled through trial by combat. If you can defeat our champion in single combat, we will grant you colony rights to a portion of this world. If you lose, you surrender the ship and accept our authority. Your champion will have weapons, armor, training. I have nothing. Kelris's eyes seemed to gleam. You have yourself. And based on what my soldiers report, that may be enough. You have already defeated 3 trained warriors today without any weapons at all. He tilted his head. Or perhaps you are afraid? Carol almost laughed. After everything she had survived, fear seemed like a luxury she could not afford. When? 3 of your days. That gives you time to train, to understand your new capabilities. We will provide you with food and a secure area of the ship. No more hunting. No more games. Kelris turned to leave, then looked back. I hope you prove worthy, Carol Bennett. It has been too long since the Threenix faced a true challenge. The aliens filed out, leaving Carol alone in the cargo bay. She looked down at her hands, still amazed by what they could do. 3 days to prepare for a fight that would determine everything. She had no weapons, no armor, no formal combat training. But she had survived 200 years of cryo-sleep. She had evaded trained soldiers on a dying ship. She had become something new, something the universe had never seen before. Carol smiled grimly. 3 days was more than enough time to become something even more dangerous. Carol stood in the cargo bay, stripped down to basic clothing while Threenix medical equipment hummed around her. Commander Kelris watched from a distance as his medical officer, a smaller Threenix named Prill, ran scanner after scanner over her body. Remarkable, Prill muttered, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Commander, you need to see this. Kelris moved closer as a holographic display appeared in the air. Carol's body was shown in translucent blue light, her skeleton and organs visible. But something was different. Her bones glowed brighter than normal human bones should. Her muscles were denser, packed with fibers that seemed to pulse with energy. Explain, Kelris commanded. Prill pointed to Carol's cells, magnified thousands of times. Normal human cells deteriorate during cryo-sleep. They break down slowly over time. But her cells did the opposite. They evolved. They restructured themselves to survive the stress. He zoomed in further. See these proteins? They do not exist in baseline humans. Her body created them during the 200-year sleep. They make her muscles stronger, her bones harder, her nerves faster. How much stronger? Calrus asked. Approximately 4 times baseline human strength. Her reaction time is 3 times faster. And this? Krill highlighted her cardiovascular system. Her heart is more efficient. Her lungs process oxygen better. She can maintain maximum physical effort for hours without fatigue. Perhaps days. Carol felt a chill run through her. She had known she was different, but hearing it explained made it real. She was not quite human anymore. Or maybe she was more human than anyone had ever been. Calrus turned to face her directly. Do you understand what this means, Carol Bennett? Your body has achieved what evolution takes millions of years to accomplish. You are a weapon that built itself. I am an engineer, Carol said firmly. Not a weapon. You will be both before this is over. Calrus gestured to his soldiers. The medical examination is complete. You have 2 days remaining until the trial. Use them wisely. After the Threenix left, Carol stood alone in the cargo bay. The AI's voice broke the silence. Chief Bennett, I have been analyzing the medical data. Your chances of survival in combat against a trained Threenix warrior are approximately 14%. Those are terrible odds. Yes. However, I have accessed the ship's gravity control systems. If you wish to train, I can create variable gravity environments to help you understand your new capabilities. Carol looked around the vast empty space. Do it. Start at normal Earth gravity. The AI complied. Carol felt the familiar pull of home, 1G of force. She started with simple exercises. Push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks. Her body moved like a perfect machine. She did 100 push-ups without breathing hard. 200. 300. She stopped only because she was bored, not tired. Increase gravity to 1.5, she said. The weight pressed down on her. She repeated the exercises. It was harder now but still manageable. Her enhanced muscles adapted quickly to the increased load. 2G. Now she felt it. Real resistance. Real challenge. Carol pushed herself through the exercises, feeling her body respond, feeling the strength in her bones and muscles. She moved through the cargo bay, practicing jumps and rolls, learning how her new body handled momentum and impact. Hours passed. Carol did not stop. She barely even slowed down. Chief Bennett, you have been training for 6 hours without rest. Normal humans require breaks. I'm not normal anymore, AI. Increased to 2.5G. The pressure became crushing. Carol dropped to her knees briefly, then forced herself back up. Every movement required total concentration. She practiced punches against a cargo container, feeling the metal dent under her fists even in the increased gravity. She practiced kicks, learning her new range of motion and power. Simulate an opponent, she commanded. Human size. The AI projected a holographic figure in front of her. Carol studied it, then attacked. She moved through combinations, testing different approaches. The hologram did not fight back, but it gave her a target, a reference point. Make it Threenix size. 7 feet tall. Give it movement patterns. The hologram changed, growing taller and broader. It began to move, mimicking combat stances. Carol circled it, looking for openings. The Threenix were larger, stronger than baseline humans. But she was not baseline anymore. And they would be used to opponents who tired quickly. She would not tire. Carol launched herself at the hologram, ducking under a simulated strike and going for the knee joints she had learned were vulnerable. She rolled away from a counterattack and came up behind it, targeting the neck area where armor segments connected. Increase hologram speed by 50%. The hologram became faster, more aggressive. Carol had to work harder now, had to think faster. She took several simulated hits before she adapted to the new rhythm. Then she found her pattern. Stay mobile. Never stop moving. Use speed and endurance to wear down a larger opponent. She trained through the first day without sleeping. The AI warned her repeatedly that she needed rest, but Carol felt no exhaustion. Her body hummed with energy, ready for more. On the second day she focused on strategy. AI, what weapons will the Threenix champion have? Based on combat trial traditions, likely an energy blade and possibly a ranged weapon. The champion will wear light armor for mobility. Show me footage of Threenix combat trials if you have any in the database. The AI projected historical recordings from first contact encounters. Carol watched Threenix warriors fight. They were powerful, precise, and brutal. But they fought like they expected quick victories. They used overwhelming force in short bursts. None of them had ever faced an opponent who could outlast them. Carol spent hours studying their movements, learning their patterns. She noticed how they shifted weight before striking, how they relied on their superior reach, how they expected opponents to defend rather than attack constantly. She would give them something they had never seen before. Final simulation AI. Maximum difficulty. 3G gravity. Hologram at full 3NX combat specifications. Do not stop until I say. The gravity slammed down on her. The hologram appeared, massive and menacing. Carol grinned despite the crushing pressure. Come on then. Show me what you have. For 8 hours she fought the hologram without stopping. She took hits. She made mistakes. But she learned. And she never got tired. Even in 3 times Earth's gravity, her adapted body just kept going. When she finally called for a stop, Carol stood in the center of the cargo bay, barely breathing hard. Her body was covered in sweat, but she felt strong. Ready. Tomorrow she would face the 3NX champion. She had no weapons. No armor. Just herself. But as Prill had said, she had become a weapon that built itself. And she was ready to prove that humans could adapt to anything. The arena was aboard the 3NX command vessel, a massive circular chamber with walls that gleamed like polished obsidian. Hundreds of 3NX filled the observation platforms above, their glowing eyes creating a constellation of blue lights in the darkness. Carol stood in the center, barefoot on the cold metal floor, wearing only simple fitted clothing that allowed maximum movement. Commander Kelris's voice echoed through the chamber. The trial of combat begins now. Carol Bennett of Earth versus Dravik, champion of the 3NX collective. The fight continues until one cannot rise. There are no other rules. Across the arena, a door opened. Dravik entered, and Carol's breath caught despite her preparation. He was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall, his segmented armor gleaming red and black. In one hand he carried an energy blade that hummed with lethal power. In the other, a compact energy weapon that crackled with stored charge. The 3NX in the stands roared their approval. Dravik raised his weapons and the sound grew deafening. Carol rolled her shoulders and settled into a ready stance. Her heart was steady. Her breathing calm. She had spent 2 days preparing for this exact moment. The starting signal blared. Dravik moved immediately, faster than Carol expected for something so large. He closed the distance in 3 powerful strides and swung the energy blade in a horizontal arc meant to cut her in half. Carol dropped and rolled. The blade passed over her head so close she felt its heat. She came up beside Dravik and struck at his knee joint with all her enhanced strength. Her fist connected with armor and the impact rang through the arena. Dravik barely stumbled. He spun and brought the blade down in a vertical strike. Carol threw herself sideways, but she was not quite fast enough. The blade's edge caught her shoulder, burning through cloth and skin. Pain exploded through her arm. The 3NX crowd roared louder. Carol ignored the pain and kept moving. She could feel her enhanced healing already working on the wound, but it still hurt. She circled Dravik quickly, forcing him to turn to track her. He raised his energy weapon and fired. The blast caught Carol in the ribs, spinning her around and slamming her to the floor. The smell of burned flesh filled her nose. Her own flesh. She gasped, struggling for air. Dravik walked toward her slowly, confidently. You are brave, human. But bravery is not enough. Carol forced herself to her feet. Her side screamed in protest. The crowd had gone quieter, expecting her to fall. She could see Kelris leaning forward on his platform, watching intently. She moved again, faster now despite the pain. Dravik swung at her and she ducked under it, getting inside his reach. She hammered her fists against his armor, targeting the same spots repeatedly. Dravik tried to grab her with his free hand, but she was too quick, already moving away. This was her strategy. Never stop. Never let him rest. Use speed and endurance against size and power. For 10 minutes they fought. Dravik landed several more hits. A slash across Carol's thigh that made her leg buckle. A blast to her back that knocked her down again. Each time she got back up. Each time she kept moving. And slowly Carol began to notice something. Dravik's movements were getting slightly slower. His breathing was becoming heavier. The 3NX were powerful, but they were built for short, explosive battles. Not this constant motion. Carol pressed harder. She ignored her injuries and increased her pace. She struck at Dravik's armor joints over and over, never in the same place twice in a row. She made him turn, made him chase, made him work for every attack. 15 minutes. 20. Carol's body was a map of burns and cuts. Blood ran down her arm, her leg, her face. But she did not slow down. Her adapted biology kept her moving even when the pain should have been unbearable. Dravik was breathing hard now. His strikes were wilder, less precise. He fired his energy weapon but missed. Carol saw her opening. She sprinted directly at him. Dravik raised his blade for a killing stroke, but Carol dropped and slid between his legs like she had practiced 1,000 times. As she passed underneath, she grabbed his ankle and pulled with all her enhanced strength. Dravik's balance shifted. He stumbled but did not fall. Carol was already behind him. She jumped onto his back, wrapping her arms around his neck where the armor segments joined. Dravik roared and spun, trying to throw her off. Carol held on. She squeezed, putting pressure on the vulnerable joint. Dravik reached back with his blade, but he could not angle it to hit her without striking himself. He tried to slam her against the arena wall. The impact drove the air from Carol's lungs. She felt ribs crack. But she did not let go. She squeezed harder. Dravik staggered. His movements became jerky. Carol felt his strength fading. The energy blade fell from his hand and clattered across the floor. He reached up to pull her off, but his grip was weak now. "You should have ended it quickly," Carol whispered in his ear. "Humans do not quit." Dravik dropped to one knee, then the other. Carol released her grip and rolled away, ready to defend if he got up again. He did not. Dravik knelt on the arena floor, his breathing ragged, his head bowed. "I yield," he said, his voice barely audible. "The human has won." The arena fell completely silent. Carol stood in the center, swaying slightly, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. She looked up at the observation platforms, at the hundreds of Threnics staring down at her in disbelief. Commander Kelris stood slowly. "The trial is complete. Carol Bennett has defeated our champion. By our laws, she has earned the right to negotiate for colony rights." The silence broke. Some Threnics roared in approval. Others made sounds of confusion or anger. Carol barely heard them. Her vision was starting to blur. The adrenaline was fading and the pain was catching up to her. Medical officers rushed onto the arena floor. Carol tried to wave them away, but her legs finally gave out. She collapsed, catching herself on her hands and knees. Kelris descended from his platform and walked across the arena. He stopped in front of Carol, looking down at her broken, bloodied form. "You should be dead. Those injuries would kill any Threnics 3 times over." Carol looked up at him and smiled through blood-stained teeth. "I am not Threnics. I am human. And we do not die easily. So I have learned." Kelris gestured to the medical officers. "Heal her. We have much to discuss once she recovers." As they carried her from the arena, Carol allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. She had done it. Against impossible odds, with no weapons and a body she barely understood, she had won. The Threnics had learned something today. Humans could adapt to anything. Even victory. Carol woke in a medical bay that was far more advanced than anything on her ship. Soft blue light surrounded her, and she felt a strange tingling sensation across her skin. The pain from her injuries was gone. Completely gone. She sat up carefully, expecting her body to protest. Instead she felt strong. Refreshed. She looked down at her shoulder where the energy blade had burned her. The skin was smooth and unmarked. Her ribs no longer ached. Even the smaller cuts and bruises had vanished. Impressive, is it not? Commander Kelris stood near the doorway watching her. "Our medical technology can heal almost any injury given enough time. You have been unconscious for 2 days." Carol swung her legs off the medical platform. 2 days. Your body was severely damaged. Even with our technology, you required extensive treatment. Kelris moved closer. "Our medical officers are fascinated by you. They say your cells were already healing themselves before we began treatment. They say you would have survived even without our help, though it would have taken weeks." "Where is my ship?" "Still in orbit around the planet. We have stabilized its life support systems as a gesture of good faith." Kelris tilted his head. "You won the trial, Carol Bennett. By our laws, you have earned the right to negotiate. So let us negotiate." Carol stood, testing her balance. "Everything worked perfectly. I want colony rights for humans. A territory where my people can settle when they arrive. Your people are still decades away according to our long-range scans. Multiple colony ships, traveling at slower speeds than your vessel." Kelris pulled up a holographic star map. "We have already claimed the northern continent of this world. But the southern continent remains largely unexplored. Smaller but resource-rich. We grant you this territory for human colonization." Carol studied the map. The southern continent was perhaps a quarter the size of the northern one, but it had rivers, forests, and mineral deposits. It was more than enough for a starting colony. "And what do you want in return?" An alliance. Calrus expanded the map to show nearby star systems. The Threenix Collective has encountered other species in this region. Some are hostile. We have superior technology, but we lack something you possess. What is that? Adaptability. Calrus gestured to her. In 1 week, you learned to use abilities you did not know you had. You defeated our champion using strategy and endurance instead of raw power. You survived injuries that would kill most species. He paused. Technology can be matched. Weapons can be countered. But the ability to adapt, to change, to overcome impossible situations, that is rare. That is valuable. Carol crossed her arms. You want to study me? Study humans. Yes. But not as specimens. As partners. Calrus brought up images of the approaching colony ships. Your cryotechnology combined with our medical knowledge could allow safe long-distance travel for both our species. Your adaptability combined with our weapons could make both of us stronger. And if I refuse? Then you still keep your colony rights. We honor the trial. But you would be alone on a hostile world with no support, no technology, and no way to contact the incoming ships for decades. Calrus met her eyes. I am offering you a choice, not a threat. Carol thought about the 47 people who had died on her ship. About the hundreds more coming in the colony vessels, unaware of what waited for them. Alone she could claim territory. With the Threenix she could build something that would protect her people when they arrived. I need guarantees. Human autonomy in our territory. No Threenix military presence without permission. Full access to medical technology for colonists. Agreed. In exchange you share your Cryo-Sleep research. You allow joint training programs between our species. And you provide consultation on human capabilities and adaptation strategies. Carol extended her hand. Then we have an agreement. Calrus looked at her hand, then carefully grasped it with his larger one. We have an agreement. 3 days later, Carol stood in the repaired cryo chamber of her ship. Threenix engineers had worked alongside the ship's AI to restore functionality to several more cryopods. The bodies of her dead crew had been given proper space burials, a ceremony that both humans and Threenix attended. Now Carol stood before the remaining pods reviewing the data. 12 more crew members who might be savable. The damage to their pods had been less severe than the others. With what she had learned about her own transformation, and with Threenix medical support there was a chance. Are you ready, Chief Bennett? Prill, the Threenix medical officer, stood ready with his equipment. Start with Pod 17. Captain Andrews. If anyone deserves to wake up to this new world, it is him. They began the revival process carefully. Carol watched the monitors intensely, seeing the same cellular changes she had experienced beginning to appear in the captain's body. The cryo-sleep had affected him too, though not as dramatically as it had affected her. After an hour, the pod hissed open. Captain Thomas Andrews gasped and opened his eyes. He was younger than Carol remembered, the cryo-sleep having preserved him perfectly. His eyes found her face. Bennett? What happened? Where are the others? Carol took his hand. We have much to talk about, Captain. But the short version is we made it. We are at our destination. And we have new allies. Over the next week they revived 8 more crew members. Not all survived. 4 pods were too damaged, the occupants too far gone. But 8 living humans was better than 1 alone. Carol gathered them in the cargo bay after they had recovered enough. She explained everything. The meteor strike. The deaths. Her transformation. The Threenix. The trial. The alliance. Captain Andrews stood beside her as she finished. So we are not conquerors of a new world. We are partners in it. Yes. And there is more work to do. Carol pulled up projections on a holographic display. The other colony ships will arrive over the next 40 years. We need to prepare. Build infrastructure. Establish communication networks. And we need to understand what the cryo-sleep did to us. Medical Officer Susan Park raised her hand. She was one of the revived crew, looking stronger than she had before sleep. I have been running tests on myself. I have the same enhancements you do, Carol. We all do. Different degrees, but we are all changed. Then we learn together. Carol looked at each of them. The Earth that sent us is 200 years in the past. We cannot go back. But we can build something new here. Something better. Humans and Threenix working together. Captain Andrews nodded slowly. It is not what we planned. But perhaps it is what we needed. Carol walked to the viewport and looked down at the planet below. The southern continent was green and blue, untouched and waiting. Threenix settlements glittered on the northern continent, their lights visible even from orbit. Two species, different in almost every way, but both capable of adaptation, both capable of growth. Behind her, the crew began discussing plans, housing, agriculture, communication, all the practical details of building a civilization. Carol smiled. They had come to this world expecting to tame it alone with human determination and technology. Instead, they had learned something more valuable. Sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when to adapt, when to accept help, when to build bridges instead of walls. The Threenix had learned that humans were more than their weapons, and humans had learned they were strongest when they were not alone. The future was uncertain. But for the first time since waking, Carol felt hope. They would build this new world together. And together they would thrive.